Okay, hello everybody. So I guess this is the last of the panel discussions today. First of all, I'd like to present, as usual, a very warm welcome to President Ahmed Dallal to campus. We're very pleased to have you with us. Chair of the Board of Trustees, Provost Ihab Abdurrahman, distinguished guests. So our panel discussion today is basically about artificial intelligence and data science. And when we're talking about artificial intelligence, it's nothing really new of the past 10, 20, 40, 50, 60 years. As far as the early philosophers, people have been trying to model people and entities using some symbolism. Greek and Egyptian mythology have made references to automatons that they had wanted to exist at some point in time. Even when we started, the domain of computing initiated, we had some very early signs of artificial intelligence, the very basic rule-based systems that we develop to try to achieve more or less the same objective of trying to perform things faster, trying to maybe capture sets of rules that allow computational machines to really exceed the capabilities of humans, at least in certain tasks, in certain limited tasks, and so on and so forth. So AI wasn't formally coined until maybe 1956. So in 1956, at a conference in New Hampshire, the terminology or the term artificial intelligence was first coined. Now, because of the lack of enabling technologies back then, and because AI is really fed on data, so like, one person says, in this world there is data, there are models, and there's nonsense. And ultimately, for lack of the presence of a significant amount of data that really feeds AI, for lack of the presence of a good enough substantial computational power back then, AI went through some progression until maybe the mid-1970s, where an AI winter really emerged, a recession in progress in AI, which was followed again by a recession in the 1980s, late 1980s, with economic recession. So lack of funding, government funding, contributed substantially to a recession in artificial intelligence. But the truth is, nowadays, is AI is going through a very notable and exponential growth. So for certain, AI is rising through the ranks of the military. Autonomous systems, drones, and so on, it's taking its way in formalization through the ranks of the military. Certain courses that are being taught at some universities around the world have artificial teaching assistants that answer questions, that respond on bulletin boards and so on, fooling much of the participants of the presence of an artificial agent that is really responding to their inquiries and so on. So to start with, I want to introduce our very distinguished panelists today. So we're really happy, one more time, for the second time actually in 3 weeks, to have Myrna on campus. So Myrna, General Manager of Microsoft Egypt, is an 02 Computer Science and 07 MBA. And can I say you're a President's Cup holder? That's good, so she certainly stands out. And Myrna, can I give you the chance to better introduce yourself, please?
Now it's working. Technology. Anyway, good afternoon, and thank you very much, Dr. Sharif, for the introduction, and congratulations once again, President Dallal. It's a real pleasure to be here, and it's true, I was here 3 weeks ago, and I always take advantage of coming back to AUC, my second home. I love being here, I love paying it back. As an introduction, so I am currently the General Manager of Microsoft in Egypt. I started this role a year and a half ago now with the advent of COVID. Prior to that, I've been in the oil and gas industry. So right after graduation, I joined Schlumberger. I spent 12 years in the company doing various roles in Egypt and Europe and different countries. I did a short stunt in the government. I was the assistant of the Minister of Petroleum back in 2015, looking after investment international cooperation. And then I did a couple of years with Emerson as the regional manager for automation in one of their group for the Gulf region, and the digital transformation director at GE for North Africa and for Turkey, just before joining Microsoft in my first role as the Surface Director for Middle East and Africa before becoming the GM of Microsoft in Egypt.
Okay,
That's
thank you.
me.
Thank you very much. Second is Nouri Sar, or Nurhan Sar. So Nouri, can I also say that you're a President's Cup holder also? Yes, okay. So Nouri, beyond that, is a grad of Waterloo, Masters, and Columbia, PhD. Can I give you a chance to better introduce yourself, please?
Thank you, Dr. Sharif. So I'm excited to be on this panel. My name is Nouri Sa'ra, and I'm a graduate of AUC. So I spent 4 years double majoring in computer science and actuarial science. And then after that, I actually interned at Microsoft, and I was offered a position in the headquarters in Seattle to lead a data science team in Microsoft Azure. So this, while waiting for my visa, I decided to go to Waterloo for a year to foster my knowledge in data science in general. So I did a Master's of Mathematics in Actuarial Science with a focus on FinTech. And while at Waterloo, I developed more passion for research and teaching. So I applied for PhD. I chose to go to Columbia University in yet another major, Industrial Engineering and Operations Research. In my first year at Columbia, I was one of the early students to actually join the Data Science Institute at Columbia. So I started my data science experience by fostering actually collaborations with the industry and the government. We had projects with the US Department of Energy. We had projects with foster care agencies, with Google Research. I also worked intensively with Amazon for 2 years, actually. And my dissertation at Columbia was a mix of operations research and data science, so basically data-driven combinatorial optimization and building efficient machine learning frameworks. And after that, I decided to come back to Egypt, mainly for 2 reasons. AUC is home. I was so excited to be part of launching the new data science program at AUC. So I actually started right before the pandemic started with the new launch of this program, and we faced quite some challenges. But I was still excited to come back home to AUC. And the other reason is a more generic reason, which is I wanted to actually give back to the Egyptian community and the local region. So I founded the Data Science Hub last year as an emerging solution to what was going on with the pandemic and promoting interdisciplinarity and engaging more students in more data science research and exposure to the international community.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Dr. Mohammad Mustafa, an associate professor at the Department of Computer Science and Engineering, a very well-known name, by the way, in the car industry in Egypt, so and in worldwide also. So when it comes to intelligent transportation systems, he is the person basically that people refer to. Mohammad, do you want to tell us a brief about yourself? And
so I've been enjoying the past 10 years in my home here in Computer Science and Engineering Department. I enjoyed interacting with my colleagues and my wonderful students, where I actually take them as seeds for hiring them in the industry, where I have some connections over there. In parallel, of course, for my academic career, I'm also very active in the industry. That's how I see it, they have to go hand in hand. I do not a very great advocate of theoretical research. I'm more of applied research. I always like to apply my research, see it in action, so that's why I keep always connection with the industry. So through multiple projects that I usually fund or sponsor with the AUC, or through other external consultancy work where I see as a venue for my students to foster. So most of my activities, of course, in the past 20 years, including the past 10 years here in AUC, were related specifically to applying machine learning in general, or deep learning recently, starting from 2012, in the area where we see, we used computer vision specifically, or visual inputs. So that's my area of comfort, and that where I see it coming into the future as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So Mohammad is really the expert on deep learning in the computer science and engineering department, with a very state-of-the-art approach to machine learning. that everybody's or most people are using around the world. So, and last I'm Sharif Ali, I'm chair of the Computer Science and Engineering Department. So, referring to a study that was made by Deloitte, a recent one, not too far away, about in 2017, the article was called "Bullish on the value of cognitive, on the business value of cognitive." About 17% of 1,500 participants realized the true value of what AI is and its impact on their organization. So we're going to go back to rock bottom, basically to square zero. And I'm going to start the other way around. I'm going to ask, Mohammad, what is AI? Can you explain to us from your perspective, what is AI really about?
Well, it went through multiple definitions actually, and it evolved through the years, as you mentioned. Initially, it was like, again, it was always the hope to replicate human intelligence. That was the goal and still the goal. However, initially we were a little bit modest in our expectations. So once we, like you give it, as you mentioned, in like on the expert system or the rule-based system, we were very happy when you give like a little bit of symptoms and then you come out with a little bit of diagnosis or candid diagnosis. That was achievement back in the 90s, but now we start to be more hungry about what should be expected in the outcome. So again, like if I coin it in a single line, so it should be trying to replicate human intelligence, like specifically decision making. That's the most difficult part of it.
Right, so replicating human intelligence and maybe even super intelligence. Yes, Nouri, what do you think AI is and how does that relate to data science? So our department co-founded the data science program with mathematics and actuarial science, and we proudly co-offer also the curriculum of data science. Nouri, what is AI and how does that fit with data science?
So to me, AI is basically using computer algorithms to kind of emulate the human behavior and understanding, cognition in particular. So it kind of like provides a system where you're trying to like just maximize the chances for success and use computational algorithms to kind of predict what a human would have done if they were in the same situation. On the other hand, data science, although intertwined with AI very neatly and closely, is a much more comprehensive process of trying to deal with the data that has been like exponentially increasing in the industry nowadays. So basically taking that data, pre-processing it, visualizing it, cleaning it, and then moving on to modeling it and providing even warehousing to like be able to monitor and evaluate such data. So it's more about like revealing patterns and dealing with big data in general, whatever that entails. And then both are kind of like linked through machine learning, which is basically how to find the patterns and predict insights into the data, basically. Okay,
great. So insights that normally one wouldn't, as a human, be able to detect without the usage of computational algorithms and so on. One thing before I head to Myrna, like one person said, in the military, people aren't going to be judged by the size of their armies, but rather by how well their algorithms are, right? So Myrna, from an industrial perspective, how do you see, AI from an industrial perspective? At Microsoft, tons of innovations happening on that front. Can you tell us more, please?
Absolutely. So I look at AI and I think AI truly amplifies human ingenuity. It really a catalyst for innovation. And the main difference between AI and traditional software is really the ability of those systems to learn from data, from experiences, to see, perceive the world around us, and to extract insights and knowledge from these massive amounts of data. And then the impact that entails across the different sectors, the different industries, I think we're seeing it all around us, whether it's in healthcare, in education, in governments, in various industries. At Microsoft, we believe in democratizing AI, so we want to make sure that technology is available to everyone, and AI is no different. We have a lot of investment in the field of AI, of course, from our very own Microsoft research, our various technologies like Azure AI platform that Nouri would be familiar with, like Azure Cognitive Services, like developing tools that are helping developers and helping data scientists in customers and in governments to really leverage existing models and learnings to develop their own applications, to build and expand on them. So we see AI as a catalyst for digital transformation and a core element to all the development that we're seeing in the different sectors and industries. And I can talk forever about Microsoft AI technologies, but we'll leave that to the questions later on.
Great, wonderful. So, Mohammad, people, AI, the state of the art in AI now is what we really call narrow AI. And narrow AI is, artificial intelligence that is really suited to attain certain tasks, like to identify people's faces, to scan and identify bad products on a production line, and so on and so forth. What is general AI? And are we close to general AI? And tell us what general AI is.
Okay, so first, like by definition, general AI is again, the whole replication of human intelligence, which we have not reached yet, and it's not hard it is hard to achieve, sorry. So currently we start to evolve by focusing on a specific problem. Like, we were very happy when you were able to classify something. So in the past and until very recent, until maybe a couple of years ago, the whole objective was to focus to build specific machines to solve specific problems. Starting from a couple of years ago, and that will continue in the future, we start to worry now about how to make this as more general as possible. So when you design an algorithm, it should not solve a specific problem, like classify whether this is a cat or a dog, for example, or the car should go left or right, but it should do some other task as well in the same time. So this is not easy. We're going to learn how to do it. We have no idea how this is going to be done, to be honest with you. But this is that should be coming in the near future to long-term future, I would say.
Right. So contributions in AI are very closely coupled with a very strong industry. It's really the industry that drives the problems, the challenges, and so on and so forth. So what's your experience, at Columbia with regards to AI and, super intelligence that people are trying to work towards and so on?
I think I can talk more about data science because that's what I focused on. Mm-hmm. So we worked on a lot of projects that were very connected with the industry in terms of using their data and leveraging it to just improve business decisions in general. So at Amazon, for example, we were working on supply chain optimization. We would do things that are related to how to analyze how their business can improve the shipping costs, or something like inventory allocation. And then you would predict what could happen if. So all of these scenarios of these are all the actions that I could have taken when I'm sending my inventory to a particular warehouse. Now I have multiple decisions of warehouses. I have multiple decisions that I can take at the warehouse itself, like whether or not I'm going to open a packet and store it on different shelves, or whether I'm going to just receive it as is. So in general, all of these what-if scenarios are analyzed using predictive analytics and then incorporated into large optimization systems in order to improve the business model. And that's just one example. We also worked on designing defense strategies for cybersecurity. I also worked with a foster care agency on improving their matchings for how they match one child with a foster care parent, and whether this match is going to result in something that is going to give the child the life they would be happy with. So these are all different domains, and one thing I wanted to comment on is data science is very, very, very important that you have this kind of domain expertise to introduce to the data, so that you're not just analyzing and brute forcing everything onto the data without understanding what kind of implications it would have on the system you are in, whether it's an industrial system or a governmental system or even just a social system like designing a foster care program.
Okay, great. So Mirna, investing in AI is definitely something of great value, right? Investing as a business, as an educational institution, and so on and so forth. So to the point of that everybody's talking about now, digital transformation, right? What can you tell us about digital transformation and its intersection with artificial intelligence? How are Microsoft technologies fueling digital transformation?
I think this is a very important topic. Digital transformation is becoming more of a buzzword that everybody's using across different industries and different businesses. But what does it really mean? And I think we can also all agree that the pace of innovation has accelerated tremendously in the past couple of decades. And the role of technology is becoming integral to how we work, to how we live, to how we learn, to even how we socialize nowadays. And I think with the past year and a half, we've seen how important technology is to all facets of our lives. And this entails something very important with the adoption of cloud computing, with our 24/7 connected lives. We are experiencing what we call a tsunami of data. And data really sits at the core of digital transformation. So as we touch base and my fellow panelists mentioned, AI helps gather knowledge and extract insights from these massive amounts of data. It enables organization to really make better decisions, to empower their employees, to support their customers, to really reinvent new business models. But it's only those organizations that are breaking data silos, that are really trying to connect the different facets of their businesses, from their employees to their customers, to their operations, to their products even and services, that are truly taking advantage of what we call digital transformation. They're really transforming. And I think these are disrupting, and there are companies that are disrupting key industries. I mean, if we look at the lodging industry, for example, with Airbnb, or we look at transportation with Uber and Careem, or our very own Swivel, these are companies that took digital transformation to heart, that leveraged the power of big data, that leverage solutions such as machine learning and artificial intelligence to drive insights, to be able to deliver better products and services, and really delight their customers with differentiated experiences. But AI and data, they go hand in hand. So to really go through a successful digital transformation journey, the organization need to look at 4 key elements. It's not just technology. The usage of technology is one thing, but it's very important to, one, look at culture. Digital transformation comes with a strong culture change, so there must be a lot of culture agents or champions within the organization to really help foster and drive that change. It must be accompanied with a change in processes, because it's digital transformation and it's not automation, which is the confusion that goes around across the industries and many companies. So it's not just taking the process as it is and automating it, replacing the people with machines. It's really reinventing the model and taking advantage of data, which means that they need to consider data as a strategic asset and to have a modern data strategy. Without a modern data strategy that looks at how they leverage data scientists, how they store their data, how they access the data, how they clean the data. Because again, AI would derive insights from the data, but garbage in, garbage out. So there must have a strong strategy around data. And then the 4th element, and in my opinion, it's really the most important, every organization must have a capacity building or a skilling strategy. What are they going to do for their employees, the new ones and the existing one? How are they reskilling their existing employees to leverage and to provide them with the new skill set that they need to truly take advantage of these new systems, of these new models, to be able to sustain those digital transformation journeys and system and build on them. And at Microsoft, we support across the board, obviously with technology, but we also devised a framework that is called the AI Country Plan. So as I said earlier, we believe in democratizing AI. We want to make sure that it's inclusive, it reaches everyone, no company, no country, no individual is left behind. And to do that, the framework has 4 key pillars. The first one is to enable digital transformation across the priority sectors of a country, again, that are essential to sustainable economic growth. The second pillar is working and building coalition with government official and policymakers for responsible innovation, looking at legislations and the like. The third pillar is, again, as I mentioned earlier, one of the most important, and that's capacity building. And these are various initiatives to empower youth, to prepare them to become the workforce of the future and to prepare them for the new jobs of the future. And the last pillar is driving societal impact, leveraging AI. So how can we leverage AI to solve society's most pressing challenges? So that's our framework.
Wonderful. So Egypt is building an AI strategy and is heavily investing in AI. So what do you think about that?
Actually, it's something that makes me truly proud. As an Egyptian, and I look at the government and the ambitious digital transformation program that they have, it's something to be really proud of. It's a solid strategy. It's a forward-looking strategy, actually, that is adopted by the Ministry of Communication and Information Technology. It's called Digital Egypt. It has 3 main pillars. It's, again, fostering digital transformation across the different sectors of the government, enabling different ministries and entities. It has a core pillar of capacity building for youth and employees, and it also fosters digital innovation, basically aiming to achieve a knowledge-based society. So that's the core of Egypt digital transformation. And with Microsoft AI country plan, we're applying that in Egypt. So again, across its 3 pillars, we're working hand in hand with the government on enabling digital transformation and enabling projects with AI technology, such as, for example, one that I'm very proud of, which was in collaboration with the Ministry of Agriculture and the Ministry of Communication and Information Technology. It's an AI agriculture assistant. We called it Hudhud. This application uses AI models to recognize imagery of crops. It can assist farmers in recognizing pests and diseases. It's like a virtual assistant, and it does not necessarily require a smartphone. They can use SMS, for example, so it's, again, very inclusive, and we expect more than 5 million farmers to use that. We use the knowledge mining technology as well with the Prime Minister Cabinet Information Decision Support Center in a knowledge mining for legal database, again looking at 400,000 legal documents, extracting information between laws and regulations and so on. And on the capacity building front, we launched, in collaboration with the MCIT, a nationwide capacity building program called Tamayuz. It has, again, various personas. It's enabling startups, freelancers, students, expert IT professionals, so many different people, really skilling them and reskilling them and giving them training and certification on data science, on AI and the like. And finally, the most important initiative that I personally am very fond of has been ongoing for 4 or 5 years now. It's in collaboration with the Ministry of Youth and Sport and MCIT. It's called Tawar wa Ghayr. This initiative is about serving and scaling the underserved communities. So it's launched across the 27 governorates in Egypt. It's providing digital skilling and digital literacy courses and employability services for the 27 governorates and the underserved community in Egypt.
Thank you very much. A key player, definitely, on the Egyptian landscape. Nouri, so there is a misconception about AI and data science. Can you tell us more about the importance of statistics and the importance of domain knowledge, along with aspects like machine learning and AI techniques in data science? And can you also tell us more about the Data Science Hub and your vision about the Data Science Hub?
Okay. So
which you founded, by the way.
The first question, I'm sorry, can you repeat it?
Okay. So data science generally may be seen as part machine learning, or data AI, basically, part statistical analysis, and part domain knowledge. Yes, can you tell us more about the importance of statistics and domain knowledge in data science?
Okay. So in data science, like the main task that you're trying to do is kind of like take completely raw data and structure it in a way that makes sense. So to do that, I mean, one of the most common misconceptions is that data science is just new. It's a hype that might fade away after a while. In fact, data science is just a new coined term, but it's been around forever. And it's just nothing but a manifestation of the continued improvement of research and innovation in statistical modeling techniques. So statistics is at the core of what data science is. We apply a lot of the statistical ground theory to practice anything related to data visualization, data cleaning, scrubbing the data, removing outliers or knowing how to deal with them, imputing missing data, for example, completing data sets that are not really complete, structuring the data in general before it's actually ready to go on to the modeling stage. And in the modeling stage, that's really where machine learning comes in place, because with all like the Internet of Things and the big data going wild these days, it has been very promising to use like computational power to kind of like catalyze the process of like modeling the data and finding patterns out of it. So you can think of it as something as simple as like stargazing. When you look at the sky, you can find like few star points, and you just find a few stars, and that's it. But then when you look closer and you're trying to like dig out patterns out of the stars, sometimes you see a spoon, or you see a rabbit, or you see a scorpion, and so on. So that's really what data science is about. It's just hunting for like those kind of insights, whether or not you have any kind of guidance to find those insights and patterns in the data. You will have some machine learning techniques that can help you find them. And that's where the machine learning comes in place. And then on top of that, a lot of people, and this is again another misconception, is that they think that data scientists necessarily need to know how to code, or data scientists are only mathematicians who are just geeks and they just know all about statistics and they know how to go forward with it. But really and truly, data science is none of that. In my opinion, a lot of data science roles don't really require any kind of coding. So there are data science roles that are like really very insightful. They're more about like developing the innovation, tuning vanilla versions of statistical models, looking into the data with some insight from the talent and expertise they may have developed throughout the years and the knowledge about the industry. And that kind of like development is not necessarily something that requires you to code. So it's not always the case that a data scientist needs to code, and it's not always the case that it's just a brute force way of like just applying all statistical techniques until you get to something. If you just brute force all of that without the insights from the domain expertise, you might be not going anywhere. So it's important to like actually have kind of a vision and a business vision that can tell you like where to look and give you kind of like the creativity and innovation into like what to do with the data if you're faced with challenges, because you're always going to be faced with challenges. So that's kind of like for me how all of these things connect together, and they all like boil down to the business intelligence that data science kind of enables the business to have. So improving all of these decisions, making them more efficient, making them computationally competitive, and so on and so forth.
Great. So you founded the Data Science Hub.
Yes.
Can you tell us more about that entity?
Okay, so the Data Science Hub is really a vision that I had after being so involved with the Data Science Institute at Columbia. So when I came back, I was really looking into engaging students and young talents, or data science enthusiasts in general, into getting the kind of exposure that is a little bit lacking in the Egyptian environment, which is basically the collaboration between academia and industry and bridging the gaps between theory and practice. So that was the main reason for me to like think of that. But then also I wanted to have like kind of exposure for the researchers that I have at the hub to like have international collaborations and see how international organizations work, how international scholars think of data science. So it's kind of like a cross-cultural perspective thing. And finally, it's promoting interdisciplinarity in the sense that data science is really nothing without the domain it's serving. So for me, it's very important for other people who are not data scientists or even not scientists at all to understand that data science is still something that can work in their favor. And therefore, the Data Science Hub for me is just nothing but a collaboration platform that kind of like combines all of that. We encourage a lot of people, whether they're students, undergrads, grads, or even people from outside AUC, to just come together on this platform and work on specific projects that I kind of, either they're part of my research or they're collaborations that we get with the industry or the government. One of the most recent projects that we actually applied was, that we started, was one with the central bank in Egypt, where we're trying to like leverage data science in proposing data-driven solutions that can actually have direct impact on the economic policy-making process at the central bank. I have a lot of interns that are just curious about what data science is, but they don't really know what data science is or where to start from. So for these, we focus more on the training side of things. So we provide coaching sessions. A lot of the interns or even people who leverage the coaching sessions in general are just people from Upper Egypt or Alexandria or like governmental institutions. So for me, it's also a very good way to reach out to other underprivileged parts of the community. And together they work on like a lot of research projects and even practical projects. So this past year we published actually 8 papers in different domains such as education, theoretical data science, reinforcement learning, supply chain, and that's what I remember.
Thank you very much. So Mohammad, you are our resident expert on deep learning and so on. And you know, at the end of the day, you use this quite a lot with the car industry. So you work on computer vision problems, you work on other problems related maybe to safety in cars and so on. Can you tell us a bit more about how you apply deep learning? Tell us what deep learning is in the first place very swiftly, and then maybe tell us how you use that in the applied world.
Okay, sure. So yeah, the term deep learning, well, by definition, like deep means that that's something that is large model by architecture. So in the past, we used to have these models were shallow because at like the few years back, we did not have enough capacity in terms of hardware or software to support complex models that what we have right now. So in the past, it was like called shallow learning, but they thought that this is the learning, the only possible way. Now we have the capacity in terms of architecture, in terms of communication ways in order to implement those architectures. So yeah, here we have it. We have developed a lot of algorithms to train complex models. That's what they call the deep model. So to train the deep model, that's what we call the deep learning, basically. From my experience with that was that mostly it was about doing things first in order to assist the driver, and then at some point replace the driver at some point in the near future. And I think very near. If it has not happened already, it will happen in a handful of years, I would say. So initially we started with driver assistance projects, like for example, how can you detect whether the driver is distracted or not? So we collected lots of data, we trained lots of models, and we have successfully deployed a model that can detect 9 different types of distractions, whether the person is playing in the radio and drinking water, playing with the mobile device, or talking, and so on and so forth. And that was actually deployed on an actual embedded device, and that was a successful prototype. Another prototype that we have deployed also, and it's actually deployed in one of the Gulf countries right now, is how can you you put the cameras now on the traffic lights, and then it can detect whether the person is talking on the phone, so detecting the distraction from the government side in order to issue tickets and so on. There was also another project related to traffic, which is how can you automatically switch on and off the time for the traffic light at intersections. So instead of working on a constant schedule on and off, you can actually, based on cameras on the intersection, can you measure the actual traffic flow of traffic, and if there is no one in this direction, yeah, we can close the traffic light and switch to the other one, and so on. So all these, I would say, yeah, it's deep learning, but again, this is kind of the easy deep learning project, I would say, because all these are following one simple technique, which is what we call supervised learning. It means that you teach the model in a teacher-student interaction. So you have, you know the correct answer, and if the model that under training gives you the wrong answer, then you give it a feedback to correct it, and through iterative learning, it can learn at some point in time, given you have a quality data. However, this is not going to be sustainable, because if you want to follow this teacher-student model, you have to what we call a labeled data. You have to have the data that is labeled. You know the correct answer, but in the future, given like the huge amount of data that's being generated each and every second now, we don't have the human capacity to label these data in order to train models. So in the very near future, I would say we have to switch to like the unsupervised way of training, which include multiple types, including the reinforcement learning, of course. So now the machine will teach itself, and that's where the real AI should happen. So currently we're still in like the middle of the revolution. We have achieved a lot, of course, by training models that can do very nice tasks. Specifically, like as I said, there is already a very good model that can perform this autonomous, well, not fully autonomous, but you can very well now drive a car without actually driving it, especially on the highway. It can follow the traffic, it can slow down when there is a car in front of you, and even it can make turns and to avoid the car that's in front of you and retake the lane, detect the correct exit following a map, a route. So everything now is still, and that's what they called like the level 2 or the level 3 in the autonomous scale. So we hope that we reach level 5 somehow in the couple coming years. Yeah.
Do you think autonomous vehicles are doable in under driving conditions like those in Cairo or Mumbai, for example, and so on?
Okay. Yeah, that's a tough one. Yeah, but well, I would say eventually it will come. But yeah, it will come later, but it will come because again, it's not about it's not about the roads, I would say. Like, it's easy to solve the problems of the roads even without like line marking. All these are easy to train the model to cope with that. The hardest part would be the unpredictable behavior of the other driver. So that's what's gonna slow us down a little bit. So, but yeah, at some point, like I would say it will come when the evolution of this option will be available in more and more cars. So at that point, when all the cars are autonomous, then you will not have this unpleasant behavior that you might see. But yeah, we don't. So the conclusion here, we don't need to change in the infrastructure of the roads. I mean, that's easy to solve because we can always make the model smarter and can recognize the roads even though you don't have markings. But it is like this interaction that needs more working, I would say.
Great. So back to Myrna. Thank you, Mohammad. Back to Myrna. So AI could be seen as threatening people regarding their jobs. Automations, autonomous systems, etc. But how do you see that happening? And the second thing is, how do you see AI contributing to social good?
Again, another very good question, because that's the trend. People are, by nature, worried about the unknown. They they worry that they will be replaced. They worry that machines are going to be more intelligent than us. They're going to replace us. But this couldn't be furthest from the truth. Actually, it's the other way around. And in my opinion, I believe AI is a catalyst for economic growth. If it's used correctly and adopted correctly, it will really help countries develop and grow their economy. And again, you look around at the impact that we've seen in various industries, and some jobs are being taken away, but they're being replaced by other more advanced roles, and that's where the stress on the skilling and the reskilling and the capacity building, and it becomes very important. And that's why it's core, as I said, to any successful digital transformation in any company, any industry, or any country, for that matter. In terms of societal impact, actually, this is what we really drive at Microsoft as well. So we believe that AI can help in solving some key societal challenges, and we launched an initiative called AI for Good. Under the AI for Good initiative, there are various programs. So under this initiative, we provide funding, we provide technology, we provide expertise to organizations and individuals, and of course nonprofits that are working on specific societal challenges. Like, for example, we have a pillar for AI for humanitarian action, so helping and aiding people who are working on solving humanitarian causes, or AI for Earth, working with organizations trying to solve environmental and climate change issues, or AI for culture heritage, for example, preserving culture and heritage around the globe. We also have a very important program, which is AI for accessibility. So as much as people are worried that their jobs might be taken away, I think there is another element that we all need to look at, which is inclusivity, making sure that AI is inclusive of everyone. And because AI has the ability to augment our own human capabilities and extend our ability, it can really and truly be leveraged in accessibility and solving accessibility matters. So we have an AI for accessibility program under which we devise certain applications, like, for example, the Seeing AI application. It's an application that helps blind people or people who are visually impaired to identify currencies or read menus and various other things. And there are various initiatives along those lines. And of course, there is AI for healthcare. And with the advent of COVID, we are putting a lot of funds into that program and aiding a lot of organizations and researchers and nonprofits who are supporting COVID-19 problems or challenges.
Wonderful. So taking on the keyword reskilling, right? One cannot imagine any business that could not benefit from AI, including academia, right? So starting from detecting the emotions and the of students in classrooms, optimizing classroom scheduling, and so on and so forth. How do you see AI, Nouri? How do you see AI benefiting the academic life? People are already talking about replacing some professors and teaching assistants. So how do you see AI benefiting the academic world?
So I actually agree with Mirna, like it's very hard to say that AI is going to replace human beings because you can never really do that. Full stop. With respect to academia, this is actually very interesting because with the rise of COVID and the abrupt changes that happened, especially with us changing going online, a lot of challenges rose last year related to proctoring, combating cheating, providing support to faculty. I mean, a lot of the instructional designers were pretty overwhelmed with the amount of requests that were going from faculty to know like what is going on in this world and how am I gonna like design my course or like support or design my assessments or just move online. Of course, there is a huge difference between remote education and online education that people were not aware about. There was a huge challenge in like how students were going to adapt to that and how we're going to like address the students' psychology, the mental capability of like even the professor to provide for that type of challenge in terms of like the human interaction between the instructor and their students. So last year, actually, the provost initiated a few grants for like pandemic challenges, and I was lucky to get 2 of them. Actually 3, but 2 of them were for education purposes. One of these projects was basically addressing the issue of proctoring. So we were trying to build an AI proctor that was not to replace a human proctor, but rather increase the confidence of the human proctor on whether or not cheating has taken place. And on this platform, the main premise was to provide interdisciplinarity in that approach. So it's not just providing a suite of like just machine learning algorithms that would detect things as they are going on, but also like take into account cognitive ability when people are trying to cheat, what happens in the human's brain, what kind of like placebo effects can you provide into this platform in order to affect the psychology of someone who would want to cheat. One of the very simple things that we found in psychology research is that if you constantly keep reminding people of the ethics code on an exam, they would actually be reluctant to cheat. So even that we incorporated into our platform, and we tried to like just give a multimodal approach into assessment in general and what we can provide on such a platform just to fight the cheating behavior that has been arising. The other project was actually very interesting. It also speaks to autonomous systems, which is basically developing an EduPal, that's what we called it. This system is more or less a chatbot that can help faculty design courses. Now, we're not saying that this is replacing instructional designers, but we did try to model as much as possible how an instructional designer would go about their consultancy. So if I'm a faculty and I need some help from something like the Center of Learning and Teaching, I would go and say, I have XYZ problems with my course, can you please help me improve, or can you help me design this course, or can you help me figure out where the problem is? And the chatbot is just trying to like crowdsource all kinds of like recommendations that will come from the internet, that will come from the literature, that will come from practical instructional designers, and put that all onto a platform so that the human or the faculty speaking to the system can kind of like just complain to the system, and the system would hopefully provide a personalized recommendation based on filtering all of those recommendations specifically to the environment of the faculty and give them like some kind of recommendations on what to do with their courses. And we thought of this system to be not replacing instructional designers, but actually helping them. So we thought of it as being a screening system before someone actually applies for consultation with CLT. They could use the chatbot first. If they're satisfied with the solution, they would just stop there. If not, they would schedule something. Another thing is that it serves underprivileged communities, so not every institution, especially in Egypt, has the luxury of having something like CLT. So it was very important to address that topic as well, and this goes back to inclusion. Any underprivileged community at that point also deserve to have the opportunity of getting such service. And these were 2 projects I worked on.
Great. So the research even went to the extent of trying to realize what people are looking at on the screens through reflective surfaces like eyeglasses or retinas. So can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, so actually this was very exciting. It's one of the ideas that came out of brainstorming session between me and Dr. Sharif. We talked about like other different ways to detect cheating, and one of the ways we were actually observing from the human behavior is that us as professors, we try to see what the student is looking at on their screen through their eyeglasses. So we thought like, why don't we try to see whether an AI system can detect something like that? It's a very challenging problem and very ambitious. It also has a lot of obstacles. We talked to Dr. Mustafa about it, so. But it's actually exciting. Like, this is what research is about. It's about like innovative ideas that seem very hard and seem very like going nowhere, and then suddenly you have it and you have a breakthrough. So we're trying to now like figure out whether the AI system can see what's on your eyeglasses in order to figure out whether you've switched the tab or not, and then if you did, then you're basically cheating.
Okay, so going to the next point, DeepMind AI, last I know, has administrator access to the Google data centers, trying to automate the way by which they can go ahead and conserve on power consumption at the Google data centers. It's scary. Having administrator access to such vast amounts of data is a very scary thing. So we started off with mechanization, mechanized systems, and then automation, and then eventually autonomous systems. And you've talked a little bit, Mohammad, about autonomous systems in terms of driving cars and so on. Can you tell us a little bit more about where autonomous systems are heading? Autonomous drones, autonomous agents, and so on and so forth. What is an autonomous system?
Okay, so again, that's with the regular transition that we are moving from designing systems that perform like peculiar steps or some specific well-defined tasks to try to get a little bit more generic or general in order to hopefully at the end of the day to achieve the general intelligence, which the overall goal. So I would say like in the past, we were in the past that was always the goal, but we did not have the means in order to achieve it. So I would say like in the early 90s, most of the revolution that was happening, that was actually a communication revolution. So you had this data and you want to large amount of data, how to transfer it, how to do the compression, and of course it include computing as well to develop the infrastructure underneath it in order to perform the actual transfer. Then we moved on to like a hardware revolution, computing, but in terms of hardware implementation. So when we start to see those large data centers that has those large GPUs and distributed computing. And then now once we have this ability to transfer the data, we have the good amount of data that can be generated, and we have the hardware that is possible in order to support it. Now we should worry more about the actual replication of the artificial intelligence system or the human intelligence. So this autonomous transformation is actually moving along those lines. So now we have the infrastructure, show us what you can do. And the overall objective, of course, is to be able to, as I said before, to have a machine that can teach itself. So we started with the problems of like solving specific decision problems. That's what we call the discriminative models, for example. It has to take a decision to discriminate between X and Y. And then we start to move on to other models, which we call the generative models and reinforcement learning, where the machine can learn itself. And the very obvious decision, the very obvious example about that was in a couple of years ago, where by DeepMind, accidentally, that was the model that was it has beaten the world champion in the Go game. The Go game is a very hard game to be played by humans. It's much more complex than chess. So this machine that has beaten the world champions, all of them, was actually trained by itself. So they train two machines in front of each other. They keep training and they keep getting better and better, and then they took that model and then they played against the world champion. So this is the trend to order to achieve this autonomous system in any problem. So that's a model that starts to being applied in many applications, including the vehicle, the autonomous vehicle. So now they're talking about, okay, the cars had lots of sensors, cameras, and other sensors. So they keep collecting data and train itself. It works in what we call a shadow mode. So the model in the car still does not take the decision, but it learns. And then at some point, when we see the decision coming from this shadow model exactly the same as the decision that's coming from the human driver, at that point we can do automatically the switch and nobody will notice the difference. So it is coming, I would say.
Excellent. So talking about investment, we have been shifting our investment in terms of infrastructure for sure, locally, to try to enable the students to do the deep learning models and so on. So we have realized that, and we're starting to reinvest in very pinpoint investments to allow our students to do that. There is a very dark side of AI. And the dark side of AI is emerging from many different aspects. Now, for one thing, Elon Musk basically talks about a point of the singularity, what lies beyond the event horizon. And to him, singularity is basically the point where, like you said, two machines teaching themselves how to play a very complex game. When AI becomes so general, to the extent that maybe years and years of innovations could happen in hours. And we have no clue what may happen beyond that point. But what we know nowadays is, as we're using Alexa, as we're using Google services and so on, the way we order those to do, like, hey, switch on the lights, what are those systems teaching our kids to do? I mean, we are using different languages basically to deal with those AI systems. How is it implicitly feeding back into the way we educate our kids about how to deal with people? Saying please and so on and so forth. That's one thing. Boston Dynamics is creating very scary machines. They're seen dancing and flipping on YouTube videos, but these machines will very likely be deployed on the battlefields one day running after people, right? So at the end of the day, talking about the dark side, even other countries are developing social ranking systems. Ranking people by how they behave, how they talk on social media, what they do in camera feeds on the streets and so on. And this is determining possibly whether they can fly planes, whether they can land jobs, and so on, engage in high-profile jobs, etc. The dark side of AI. Let's just go through a quick round of what the dark side of AI may be.
You want me to start? On the dark side of AI, okay. First, I want to just give a couple of comments on the discussion that we just had. Again, on the difference between artificial intelligence and human intelligence, and that will lead us to the dark side of AI, because the responsibility will always lies with us. So there will always be a differentiation between human intelligence and artificial intelligence. They're faster than us, for sure. They can deal with massive amounts of data, gather insights, and get us through innovation that would have otherwise taken years. But they lack three key traits that are unique to humans, and that's self-awareness and curiosity, and more importantly, intuition. And I think we need to use these three traits when we think of how are we going to combat the dark side of AI. And as such, again, at Microsoft, we believe that there is a huge responsibility that lies on all of us. We believe that AI is definitely the defining technology of our time, and we are the generation that is actually taking that technology to society. So the responsibility is on us to make sure that there is an ethical system of how AI is being used, or an ethical framework. And we devised that framework, and we're collaborating again with different governments and policymakers around the globe to make sure that the core principles of our framework are being leveraged. So this framework has 4 core principles and 2 foundational principles. The 4 core principles are, the first is fairness. How do we make sure that those systems that are being developed are actually fair? That the conscious and unconscious biases are being avoided. The second one is on reliability and safety. How reliable and safe are these autonomous systems going to be? Can they really take the decisions on our behalf? How do we bring all the learning from the automobile industry, for example, when it first came along, to make sure that these safety measures are there? So these are thinking that we need to derive. The third principle is on privacy and security. So there is a huge movement around the world, and in Egypt as well, on data privacy, on security, cybersecurity, making sure that data doesn't fall in the wrong hands or being used in the wrong way, and all the laws and regulations around it. And then the fourth principle is the one that we've all talked about, and that is the one around inclusion, making sure that no one is left behind, that everybody gets to take the benefits of AI. It doesn't favor people over others based on race or gender or abilities and accessibilities, etc. And then the two foundational principles are really one that is core to everything, and that's accountability. I think we need to all think how we are going to hold those computer systems accountable to humanity, and how are the people who are basically bringing those ideas and innovation and building those machines, how would they remain accountable to all of us building those systems? And then the last principle, which is the second foundational principle, is transparency. I think it's very important that all technology companies, and Microsoft at the forefront, that we are transparent as to how we are building our system, how we're making progress around those key principles of inclusivity, of fairness, of safety, etc., etc., and that all this information is shared in a transparent way. I think if we have that system, we will be able to fight the dark side of AI.
Yes. Nouri, one quick comment, please, about that.
Actually, I think Mirna said it all.
Excellent, okay. Yeah, so keeping in mind it took years for the automotive industry to actually push forward legislation beyond so many accidents for seatbelts. And the dark side, one quick comment before we open the floor to very quick questions.
Okay, so yeah, the dark side is of course related to actually, unfortunately, coming from the humans, so believe it or not. So one important discovery recently that we have seen, so we have trained lots of face recognition systems, for example, to biometrics. So unfortunately, it was found that these systems were trained according to like the human that was training them. So at the end of the day, this system was biased, and it was discovered that it was biased against some specific ethnicity, for example. That's because of the human being who was behind the training. So that's one source of dark side. The other one is, of course, is if you let the training without some kind of ethic rules, and that's a big topic of research in the academia and the industry as well. It will be very monstrous and will be very scary. So like one quick example of that, when we train, for example, a car, when it has to fail, there is nothing like 100% accuracy, right? So when it has to fail, we have to design what we call the exception handler. And that's if, for example, the car has to hit something in order to stop. So you have a choice now, and you have two things in front of you. You have a tree and you have a person. What would you hit? From the car point of view, from the pure AI, hitting the person is better because it won't cause too much damage to the vehicle. However, from ethical point of view, that has to be addressed. So that's also something that needs to be addressed.
It reminds us of the decision taken during an iRobot movie at some point in time. So thank you very much. It's been a wonderful discussion. Indeed, I thank all the panelists here, and I'd like to open the floor for one quick question, maybe two quick questions.
Oh, come on, it's your inauguration.
Thank you so much. This is great. I mean, first of all, it's great that we're embarking on this work here at AUC. We need to. It's a defining. This technology is the defining technology as we, and starting from digital literacy all the way into deep learning and so on and so forth. But what you referred to at the end is quite important as well. There are three areas where research is woefully lagging. One is regulation. Second one is ethics, as it comes to IT and artificial intelligence and data science. And the third is policy. Policy in the sense of larger policies that drive decisions. And we need to remain mindful of this. And as we do the scientific work, we also need to do that other work. We can't forget it. We can't leave it behind. I mean, we've seen examples, doctoring election results, hitting the person makes much more sense from the perspective of the machine. The machine is ethically neutral, indifferent. And you replicate intelligence and decision-making capacity, but you also replicate the biases that the programmer brings into the machine, which is why we need to remember research into ethics, and it's globally lagging. I mean, there's very little analysis on regulation, for example. There's very little regulation of IT. IT is moving so much faster than lawyers can move, than policymakers can move, and so on. So we need to remain mindful of this.
Do we have time?
I believe so.
Okay, well, thank you. And very, very encouraging to hear this conversation taking place here at AUC and to see the good work we're doing. I want to pick up on the ethics point. I run a cybersecurity company, so I deal in very large amounts of data. Most of it is collected by every phone in this room. No one is giving me permission to use this data. So we talk a lot about algorithms and the bias that can be written into an algorithm. And by the way, the easy choice of an ethical algorithm we saw just terribly less than a year ago in the war between Azerbaijan and Armenia, when it was believed that the first autonomous drone targeted and killed human soldiers on the other side. So this was an algorithm that made an ethical choice to kill a human being, and did so. But the selection of data and how the data is collected and for what purpose is itself an ethical question, the underlying data that you're using. So my company, we make ethical decisions every day on whether to use or not to use data for cybersecurity purposes. We're the American University in Cairo. We're a liberal arts institution. If we can find a way to teach and look at this question from different angles, including the ethical angle, this should be one of our key contributions to the students who are leaving our campus and going into this world. I mean, we need to put some ethical dimension or ethical training or class, or at least the ability to think about these issues, because they are woefully lacking in the industry.
Okay, thank you very much. I believe this is time to actually call it a day, and actually not for you, maybe. So, so thank you very much for being a great audience.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Really, really interesting. Well moderated.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
That was really good.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. It's great. Thank you very much.